What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Sloppy Saturdays. And today we have a very sad episode for you guys. If anybody didn't hear, you are hearing it now. Over the weekend, it has been brought to the college football world that Evan Stewart is likely out for the season with a major injury that he endured in practice. Now, injuries are horrible, especially season enders. They are never good, especially before the season even starts. But I believe this was the worst time for this injury to happen for this Oregon program and for Evan Stewart. Now, we're going to get into everything, how it affects Evan Stewart, who could possibly step up for Oregon, everything we're going to go over. But why I think this is the worst time for this injury to happen for Evan Stewart and for Oregon. When we talked about Oregon in our Oregon preview, if you guys want to go back to that, our way too early Oregon preview, Oregon was going through almost a transitional period. You never want to say a transitional period for these big programs, but Oregon really had a lot of NFL departures and NFL talent last year. And we all thought this was going to be Oregon's year where they could have a real shot of a national championship last year. I mean, they were the number one ranked team for a majority of the season. They had a ton of NFL talent. They had one of the best college football quarterbacks in the history books. And they obviously come short. They beat Ohio State, which we thought was going to be a huge win for them. We knew eventually they could be matched up with them again, and then they get blown out by Ohio State. Oddly enough, Evan Stewart doesn't play in that game. Now, when we were previewing Oregon going into the year, we thought Evan Stewart was going to be the one guy that was really going to have the biggest opportunity in this Oregon offense. Because when you look at Evan Stewart in his career, he never played a full season at Texas A&M. I feel like he really never hit his potential there. And then in this Oregon team last year, it looked to me and to many other people that Evan Stewart was the most talented guy on his Oregon offense. The issue was you had upperclassmen such as Tez Johnson, Trayshawn Holden that stayed at Oregon. You had Jordan James, Terrence Ferguson. All these guys went into the NFL this year. So I don't think Evan Stewart had the opportunities that he should have in his Oregon offense. And this year was really the time for him to shine. He was now the veteran in that Oregon offense, and he was the guy that was going to get the main target share. He was the guy that was going to help Dante Moore grow into a great NFL quarterback. And that just didn't happen, obviously, with this injury. And when you look at Evan Stewart, this is so huge because Evan Stewart made this decision to not go in the NFL draft and stay another year. There's no doubt Evan Stewart could have went into the NFL draft. He could have been a third, fourth round guy. And I actually agree with his decision to stay. But you're always taking on this risk of staying that you could possibly get injured and damage your draft stock. But Evan Stewart was a guy, especially coming out of high school, a super prospect type of guy where I think this guy could have really been a second or first round receiver after this year. And I told you guys plenty of times last year and going into this year that Evan Stewart was a guy that I thought was going to be a top 5 receiver in college football this year. I thought he was going to be an absolute star. And now I feel like you guys are getting robbed of a star, not seeing a star player talent in the college football world that's constantly growing. Like, this injury just sucks. And like I said, for this Oregon program, a program that lost a lot, this was going to be one of their veterans that they were so lucky that he was able to come back. And now the question marks are really going to be for this Oregon offense. When you look at this offense, this receiver room now has realistically no veteran with a big enough sample size to say, hey, this guy's going to take over this offense. And then you have other people who are a little unexperienced in the college football world that may have a shot talent-wise, but it's going to be a big leap for these players. Let's go over this Oregon depth chart, basically. They have Gary Bryant Jr. Gary Bryant Jr. is a guy going into his 5th year. He has a sample size at USC and Oregon of like 500-yard seasons, and he could take the step into his 5th year being possibly the guy in this offense. But again, we saw 4 years already of Gary Bryant. One of the years last year obviously cut short, but he is a bigger receiver. He can play on the outside. Again, you're taking a huge leap of faith with Gary Bryant. Same thing for Malik Benson. Malik Benson, a guy with a unique skill set, kind of reminds me of Deebo Samuel, a tougher physical receiver, but his jump was supposed to be last year at Florida State. Obviously, Florida State was a complete dumpster fire last year. You could argue that it was the worst situation in a Power Four conference that Malik Benson could have went to. He had really no shot to take that leap. That offense was just abysmal. Can he do it again? A guy that played at Alabama, a guy that played at Florida State, a guy that played in the JUCO route. You're going off of these 4 or 5 year guys to take this leap. Is it possible? Yes, but we just haven't seen it yet. Now, the two guys that I think could really take a hold for this offense, but again, it is a very big leap and a very big ask. First off, I really like Kenyon Sadiq. I think Kenyon Sadiq is a physical mismatch at the tight end position. I think he waited for his time. When you look at him behind a guy like Patrick Herbert, behind a guy like Terrence Ferguson, learning in this offense, I think it is definitely his time to shine. But to be a complete number one option as a tight end, it is going to be rough. And then the guy everybody wants to hear about is Dakarrion Moore. Dakarrion Moore could definitely be the guy in this offense. This is the guy everybody should be looking at, this Oregon offense after the Evan Stewart injury, to take this leap. When you look at him, number one receiver in the draft class, true freshman. I thought he had the perfect setup being behind Evan Stewart. This is a guy that could play primarily in the slot, get a diverse amount of routes. He reminds me of Jackson the Jigba coming in with another star receiver, but now Evan Stewart's out, so this is going to be the guy to take the leap. I think it's definitely possible as a slot guy that he could be Dante Moore's number one option, because when you look at Dakarrion Moore, again, no other guy coming into this class was the top receiver. It was him. But other than that, when you look at Jeremiah Smith, Ryan Williams, it can be a little misleading. Like, for a true freshman to come in and take a hold of a elite offense, it's very rare. Ryan Williams did that again. He did have an 800-yard season. He did really come alive in that Georgia game and in the beginning of the season. He wasn't in the best offense he could possibly be in, Ryan Williams, with the inconsistency in the passing game, but he definitely showed that he could be a number one receiver in college football. I think that route is a little more realistic than Jeremiah Smith. Jeremiah Smith came into an offense with a ton of NFL talent. Yes, he became the number one option in that offense, but that's not the offense that Dakarrion Moore is getting into right now. Like we said, there's a ton of question marks for the pass catchers. Evan Stewart was really supposed to be that guy. And again, for an offense that lost a lot of talent and there's a lot of turnover, it's going to be tough. But Dakarrion Moore definitely in the slot could beat you in a variety of different ways. He is the guy, realistically, as a pass catching option that could take this leap. It's just, is he going to do that as a true freshman? Please don't look at Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams and expect him to be that. Can he be that? It is possible, but it's not a realistic expectation. What I think is going to happen for this Oregon offense, I think you're really going to see them double down on this run game. That's what I think is the best approach for this Oregon offense, at least in the beginning of the season, before a pass catcher really stands out and says that they could be that guy. When you look at this Oregon offense, like what they did with this offensive line, I thought was phenomenal. When you go with Emmanuel Pregnon, Isaiah World, like this offensive line, what they did in the transfer portal, they really shored it up. And not only that, the run game is phenomenal. When you look at Dante Moore, he's going to be one of the most prolific running quarterbacks in college football. There's no doubt. I mean, when you saw him at UCLA, he definitely wasn't managed right, and that definitely was a little too soon as a true freshman. And we saw what happened when UCLA passed that. They have been a complete dumpster fire. But to rely on Dante Moore's legs, I think that could really settle in him. I think the offensive line is going to be really good. Like we said, Isaiah World, Emmanuel Pregnon, Isaiah Harkey, bringing in those three guys. And the running back room is really going to be the strong suit. When we look at Malachi Hughes at Tulane, this is the one veteran in the offense that you could rely on as a running back. Jordan Wingleton has been a running back in this offense for 3 years now. This running game and offensive line is going to be really good. I think Oregon should really double down on the RPO game. I think Dante Moore, like I said, no matter what he comes into as a starting quarterback, because he is a question mark, his legs are going to be reliable, and these running backs are going to be reliable, and this offensive line is going to be one of the best in college football. They should really double down on the run game right away and see who steps up as a pass catcher. But again, going back to Evan Stewart and this Oregon program, like I said, this was the worst possible time for Evan Stewart to get this injury. Him going into a year that was a developmental year where he could come in, become a complete star in college football and rise his draft stock to the NFL. Now, what is Evan Stewart going to do? Is he going to stay another year? Is he going to go in the NFL draft when his stock is going to be the lowest? And if he stays another year, he's going to be in that 2027 draft class now, where he's a lot older. But not only that, that's going to be a year where Ryan Williams, Jeremiah Smith, like those guys, like he could be in that draft class. Is that the smart move? I really don't know. This was the worst possible year this could happen for Evan Stewart. I feel bad for you guys as you guys are robbed of a possible star in college football. And he's obviously robbed as a huge year of him going into the NFL draft, which was supposed to be. Like I said, he decided to stay another year, up his draft stock, and now he isn't going to be able to do that. And now he's going to have a big decision to make at the end of this year. And for this Oregon program, like we said, we previewed for you guys that he was going to be a star in this program. He was going to be the veteran option. We showed you guys who could possibly step up. If it's going to be anybody, it's going to be the Carrier Moore. But this Oregon program could possibly be a back-end college football playoff team. But again, their ceiling isn't going to be as high without arguably their best player in Evan Stewart. That wraps up this episode of college football of Sloppy Saturdays. This episode for Evan Stewart. And again, I'm just so upset at this injury. We got robbed of a star. We'll see you guys in the next episode. Sloppy Saturdays is